Welcome back to another sci-fi episode where psychology and finances collide. We're going to continue to examine how we think, feel, and behave with money as it pertains to financial stressors, mental health, and suicide. So in the previous episode, and I would encourage you to go and listen, we were talking about September being Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And yes, I know from time to time we have some somber episodes, but they're important because financial stress can turn into financial distress, which could lead to loss of life, mostly in the form of suicide. I provided some statistics in the previous episode, but just to remind you of where I received these statistics, I attended a one-op class, and it was called Understanding Financial Uncertainty and Military Suicide Risk. And it was presented by two epidemiologists from the Defense Suicide Prevention Office. And I thought this would be a great couple of episodes just to share this knowledge because, as stated in the previous episode, it's not just about military rates. One of the statistics is that service member suicide rates generally track U.S. population rates. So many times the research that we'll see in different sectors of the military generally are true for the larger population as well, because when it comes to research, the military population is simply a sampling of the larger population. So even if you're not tied to the military, this is still a good episode that provides some information on how and when to seek assistance, but also understanding the financial stressors and suicide risks that comes from this. So what I've learned and some of the bullet points that I had written down for this is one of the key findings is that economic downturns and personal financial hardship elevate suicide risk in civilian and military contexts. And I've seen that in the research that I've seen in multiple articles. It states the same thing. So recessions, even political, economic recessions, what we're being fed in the news. So even if a particular economical phenomenon is not occurring, but it's said that it is occurring or will be occurring, that highly influences how we think and what we do with our money, and also how we react to the information at large. So here's another one. Among service members, financial and legal problems are documented risk factors for suicide attempts. And one study even found 31% of soldiers experienced at least one financial hardship in the past year. And that includes trouble paying bills, pawned items, emergency loans. But here's one of the things that really stuck out to me is that 44% of the active component reported intimate relationship problems within 1 year of the completed suicide. And that's significant to me as a therapist because intimate relationship problems normally include the 4 hot topics, which are finances, communication, sex, and children. So a huge portion of that 44% that were found to have or reported intimate relationship problems prior to the suicide, that really, again, even increases the percentage of financial issues prior to the suicide. And it breaks my heart, not only as a therapist, but as a financial counselor, that one of the larger buffers is education and financial literacy. If only they were offered hope. If only they had the tools that could show them there is a way out. And I provide an example over and over again, not just in the podcast episodes, but also in the sci-fi classes that I provide. When I have folks in my office, whether civilian or military, and I'm working with them on a debt management program, and that's basically a fancy way of me plugging in all of their debts into a system called PowerPay, and PowerPay is free. So I just simply plug in all the numbers, and we're just doing a cursory glance at how long would it take you to pay all of this debt down. And if we use the snowball method, like using the PowerPay method, and we see the years shaved off. So for example, it'll show us like, okay, so without using PowerPay, it's going to take you 14 years to pay this off. No wonder you're in a state of financial distress. You feel hopeless. You feel helpless. You're overly anxious. You can't sleep at night, right? And then when I provide the number after plugging in everything, but by using PowerPay and using the snowball method without adding any extra money to it, you can pay all of this down in 3 years. The tears that flow, the sudden hope and expectation that individuals have, because now the curtain has been pulled back and the scales of anxiety start to fall. That's what we're looking for. So that's a protective factor, is getting involved in some debt management program. And that's not necessarily debt settlement, especially if you have a security clearance. Talk about some other things with a professional before you go that route. But for other folks, debt settlement may be the route that would be most helpful for them. So some other bullet points and takeaways from this class. Suicide risk is shaped by factors at 4 different levels: individual, relationship, community, and suicidal. And I kind of talked about that already, especially with what we're consuming on social media, in the news. That includes community and society, or whatever political anxieties that we might carry. That also can influence us and put us at risk for further financial distress. But then there are the individual and relationship, which is what I hone in on in the actual sessions that I have with clients. Number 1, going back to basics, creating or actually just doing a cash flow analysis. And then from there, after examining income coming in and expenses going out, creating a spend plan from that point. What would you like to do with every dollar? What kind of job would you like to assign to every dollar that you're pulling in? And then also educating on the many facets of personal finance to feel more in control. So just getting back to those basics. How do you responsibly use credit, and how do you responsibly give, and all these other things while meeting your financial obligations and keeping a roof over your head and dinner on your table. And then relationships. I have a financial intimacy class coming up in October. What kind of financial discussions are we having at the dinner table? Or what kind of financial discussions are we having in an active argument? One author put it best that the only time some couples are talking about money is when they're fighting about it. That's another thing that I help folks with, is to get them out of a state of financial distress and just moving to a state of maybe financial stress, but at least it's now doable. At least we can tackle this. Some other key risk factors include prior attempts, and these are key risk factors to actual suicide. Prior attempts, job or financial loss, legal issues, relationship conflict, we just talked about that, social isolation, and easy access to lethal means. So let me talk now about the protective factors, or what I call buffers. Each one of these encompass strong support networks, effective coping skills, clear and defined reasons for living, financial literacy. We've talked about that at length in the previous episode. reduced access to lethal means, and cultural or moral objections to suicide. I remember in my clinical days as a therapist that was cited as one of the larger buffers, is that cultural or moral objection to suicide. But let me talk about the things that we can certainly control here. Who are our support networks? Do we have parents that we can talk to about our financial stressors? Are they knowledgeable about finances? If they're not, we can move to the next person, someone who has the right and has earned the right to speak into our financial worlds, someone that we can trust with that information. And if you don't have anyone in your family that could do that or within your sphere of influence, then you could hire a professional to help you with that. Many tax professionals have knowledge in personal finance, certified financial planners, accredited financial counselors like myself. And then we have effective coping skills. That's probably one of the bigger things we can tackle first, is what are the things that you do when you undergo stress that are effective in overcoming that stress? That's a great way to identify what those coping skills are. Now let's talk a little bit about relationship and communication dynamics. Financial stress correlates with lower relationship quality. We've already seen that in the stat with the 44% reporting that they were experiencing intimate relationship problems. Healthy communication can be a huge buffer to the negative impact of financial strain on marital satisfaction. Partners sharing financial values report higher stability. Let me start that again. Partners sharing financial values, they share the financial values. They don't necessarily have such divergent financial values that they never get along about money, but they actually share a lot of the same financial values and have a lot of commonality with those values. They report higher stability, while mismatched values or financial values drive conflict and lower marital well-being. So a lot of folks will call each other spendthrifts or tightwads, savers versus spenders, but I try and teach couples to use more accurate terms like celebrator versus defender, where you're not insulting one another, but you at least understand how you're different, but each one of those have purpose. So even if financial education alone is not what leads to greater financial stability within your home and within your particular marriage, perhaps marital counseling can help as well. So here are some other proactive financial counseling considerations. I want to normalize for you that counseling is a proactive strength-building service. It doesn't always have to be used as a crisis intervention. So I would encourage you to think of it as something that can be used anytime financial stress or financial distress starts to rear its ugly head. And also future planning. Building emergency savings to cover at least 1 month's expenses can be helpful in reducing that financial stress. Maintaining healthy credit and actually following a spend plan and tracking your expenses, those are all things that you can do on your own as buffers. And going back to a prior episode that I did on financial well-being, what they found in this research is that financial well-being scores did not increase due to income, gender, or educational attainment. It all had to do with how much you had in your savings, which only had to be $2,000. Having $2,000 set aside in emergency savings was a surefire way to increase your financial well-being scores. That says a lot. So some recommendations that I have for you, again, whether you're an individual, you're a couple, you're a parent, or maybe even a leader, whether you're in military leadership or civilian leadership, maybe getting folks involved with some organizational development opportunities for folks to come in, professionals to come in and talk about financial education, financial literacy. in churches and in other community settings so that we can make sure that we're reaching all of these people where they are. And by the way, if you do have access to military installations, you can seek information through Army Community Service, Fleet and Family Support Centers, Airmen and Family Readiness Centers, where we have personal financial counselors and financial readiness professionals that can assist you. If you're geographically separated and you have no one, you could use Military One Source for financial counseling as well, and it's all free at 800-342-9647. You can also go through the resource library of the Defense Suicide Prevention Office and see what other instrumentalities or other modalities that they actually have researched and found to be helpful in reducing suicidal behavior. And also for those that may not be tied to a military installation at all, you can also seek free financial education through your bank of choice. Just remember, banks will try to sell you whatever product is hot on the market or whatever special they have going on, but you can gently decline and just say that you're there for the education. So remember that with all of these combined efforts and what you're doing for yourself and what you're doing in your marriage, whether these are independent financial or relational stressors, let's strengthen each other. Let's strengthen each other's resilience and reduce suicide risks across the entire community. If this has been helpful for you, please rate and review the pod wherever you listen. We hope that you will invite us into your car, into your workspace, or wherever you listen in the future. Thank you.